Oh God, James, what have you done? Hey Ludo. I've just spent the last 2 weeks basically submerged in Silent Hill 2 and I'm honestly a bit lost in the sauce. How did I find the remake? Well, yes, some aspects were really good, but others were ruined by attempting to homogenize a genre. No, I'm not nostalgia blind like Yahtzee. I've played through the remake first and then went back to tackle the original for the first time ever, and honestly, it's got me a bit confused. Now, Silent Hill 2 is arguably one of the most iconic and impactful survivor horror games ever made, and Bloober Team had the unenviable task of attempting to tackle a remake of it, which is tricky to say the least. Do you attempt to stay faithful to the original, or make adjustments to attempt to improve? And Bloober certainly attempted, changing a lot of things in the process. Like with an increased focus on combat, redesigning and adding a whole host of new puzzles, all in all making the game about 3 times longer. But the main thing they changed, which is seemingly small but I find infinitely fascinating in its ability to ruin or make the remake, is the camera. So for context, the remake utilises an over-the-shoulder third-person camera system that the player has full control over, but in the original, the camera angle would change based on what environment you were entering, utilising a fixed point camera that stays static but can rotate based on the player's position. Now, why this is so important is how this form of camera can utilise framing. As designers, there's a lot of information we need to effectively present to the players, where to go, what to do and what to focus on to give the players the threads needed to solve puzzles and even progress. The most basic way we do this is through framing, which is the placement, colour, lighting and layout of the environment as you enter it, which is carefully designed in a way to draw the player's eye in certain directions. Think of the first time you see a room as a snapshot with all of the information needed to progress in this one frame. The advantage of Silent Hill 2's original camera is that each room is a unique opportunity to frame whatever information needs to be delivered, be it any items that are needed to progress or where to go, but its most noteworthy application is in how it frames horror and suspense. Super Eyepatch Wolf did a fantastic video breaking down how Junji Ito, famed horror manga author, uses the medium of manga to deliver horrifying moments through the action of a page turn itself, building suspense carefully to line up with the act of turning a page so that the reader has a horrific expectation and its reveal is up to them. This is such a beautiful way of utilising the medium itself to deliver horrifying moments, but I believe something similar is being done here in Silent Hill 2 through the usage of its camera and room transitions. Utilising different camera techniques to build suspense, like the aforementioned fixed point camera to give this sense of the player being watched or observed. An orbital camera that follows James can be distanced to emphasise the wide open spaces to trigger agoraphobia, or placed to follow in front of James, like in the apartments after you first encounter Pyramid Head. The player should be expecting to run into something horrific, so they utilise the orbital camera in front of him so that you can't see what's coming. Or utilising a truly fixed camera perspective in specific situations to force framing and create anticipation of a reveal. You enter a room, radio blaring, anticipating the horrors to come, and entering that next room is, in effect, the page turn. The camera is just a tool used to shape how the player should feel and manage the pacing in any situation, and the suspense this camera facilitates is intoxicating and only intensifies the further you descend into James's psyche. Well, how does the remake handle this? Poorly? No, that's not fair actually. There's a lot of positives to shifting to a different camera style in terms of horror. Putting the control of the camera in the player's hands gives a lot more opportunities to build more instances of paranoia. For a simple example, you can't see what's behind you, therefore making sound a much more powerful tool. In a forced camera perspective, there are only really 2 answers to where a non-linear sound could be coming from. It's either inside the room or it's in the next. Great for setting up page turns, but with a third-person camera, the same sound has 360 degrees of options, leading to a lot of second guessing and paranoia. This is only accentuated by the fact that the player has a very limited field of view, which in itself feels claustrophobic, but also forces the player to frantically scan the environment for threats hinted at by these sounds. But by changing the camera, it also has drastic effects on the level design. Instead of being able to signify and frame through the action of entering a room, there are now an infinite amount of variables needed to be considered in how we deliver that same information, because it's now up to the player and how they frame the scene with their own camera. We just need to subtly guide them in different ways. The most obvious way Bloober Team has done this is through the usage of white cloth, which signifies areas that James can traverse. No, I'm not having a yellow paint debate with you. The realm of possibility of where to go is infinitely more complex here, so they need to indicate perhaps a progression somehow. The same with the usage of starker contrasts of light and dark to guide the player's eye, or sound effects and enemy movements. Lootable items have now been signified with a contextual UI element because the framing of those items can't be forced like with the original fixed camera. These are needed and positive changes, but do cast disadvantages on the atmosphere as a whole. For example, in the original game, the flashlight and mannequin are framed in a way that creates the impression of being watched. The focus is on the mannequin's clothes and its relevance first, and the flashlight being a surprise reward for that curiosity. In the remake, they require the lighting of the torch to guide you, where the focus is now reversed, flashlight over mannequin. Hence, why they have James mention its relevance in dialogue instantly to bring the focus back to it in comparison to the original, where this happens organically. How information is framed, be it narrative or mechanical, loses a lot of its kick because of this, and this is one of my main issues with the remake. The pacing and sense of suspense has been completely tampered with, and speaking of tampering with pacing, here's today's sponsor.
This video is brought to you by GameMaker, the free, fast, and easy-to-use 2D game engine that helps power modern classics like Undertale, Hotline Miami, and Hyper Light Drifter. Starter templates, official asset bundles, and a wealth of tutorials are available to help bring your ideas to life. And you can export and share your game for free on all non-console platforms. But you don't have to take my word for it, I'm just some jerk. We have an actual bona fide GameMaker on hand.
Oh shit, that's me. Yes, I've been using GameMaker for a long time. It's probably the most powerful and easiest to use engine for making 2D games out there, suitable for both amateurs and hardcore coders, and with all the Steam and console integration stuff for when you're ready to start monetizing your hobbies. I used it to make my recently released game, Starstruck Vagabond, which has already delighted thousands of sci-fi cozy game aficionados thanks to GameMaker being so bloody great.
Head on over to the GameMaker link in the description to begin your game development journey today.
Oh, don't look at me like that. I'm not proud of that segue either, but a girl's gotta eat. That girl namely being you hungry bitch. Anyway, the destruction wrought by changing the camera is that they've had to add a gigaton more enemies in an attempt to achieve the same suspenseful effect, but because of this, the pacing and tone of combat now, kinda sucks. But isn't that the point? Well, yeah, for the original, it was designed that way to be clunky to aid in suspense. Having to reload through menus, the amount of ammo needed to take down enemies made every encounter tough and a chore in a way that was intense, but the amount of enemies were limited to accommodate for that. But here, as much as combat does feel a lot smoother, every corner you turn is a gangbang of symbolism that loses all of its meaning through repeated bombardment. Yeah, it's nice that they're a lot easier to kill, but they multiply the amount of them tenfold to accommodate for that. Everything is just fodder, and yeah, I know these enemies are meant to signify the mental turmoil of James, but this James is in mental turmoil because I'm bored of seeing the same enemies over and over and over again. Let me do these interesting puzzles and digest the story and stop making me smack the same gimp to death for the 50th time in a row in one solitary hallway. The sense of suspense is just gone. It's evaporated. I honestly don't think I was scared once during my playthrough. No, it's not because I'm a big manly man, it's because I'm drowning in ammo. Now, okay, I get that you need to provide each player with excess ammo relative to the median usage from testing, leading to a lot of players to have more than the average. But, because of how easy it is to beat a gimp with a stick, I never needed to use my gun, so I could hoard ammunition, which just meant that no matter what the threat, I could handle it. In the original, I didn't find any ammo in the apartments before I stumbled upon the gun. It was a surprise reward. But in the remake, I had enough ammunition to take down a fucking elephant before I even set eyes on a gun. This, in combination with the amount of enemies here, just obliterates any kind of suspense, but also messes with guidance. For example, in the original, when you find the key for the Woodside's apartment, the area is already marked on your map previously, so you head there quietly contemplating what's to come. But in the remake, you pick up the key and before you have a chance to read what's on it, enemies appear, encouraging you to back out. You're then surrounded and need to run. They then have the genius idea to add wind and howling effects and litter the streets with enemies. What did that key say? Where am I meant to go? Well, good luck finding a chance to look with all this shit going on. What were they thinking? It's this weird notion that, oh, we've got to add more combat or the players are going to get bored. This is some real ADHD gamer pandering and I hate it. If you're going to make changes, at least have it motivated by wanting to improve on the original's flaws, not what made their suspense so good. Like trying to improve their puzzles. Because a lot of them were not ideal. The leaps in logic James was expected to make were pretty wild. Like, mate, why is your first instinct to put your hand down that bloody toilet? Or push soda down a chute to get a coin? It's meant to be surreal, yeah, but not to the detriment of logic for your logic puzzle game. See, I understand why Bloober made a lot of these changes to the puzzles for a smoother experience, but what I don't understand is adding a litany of new puzzles that are equally as baffling. I'd do a puzzle in the remake and think, oh, that was a bit wank, but it's fair, you know, it's an older puzzle. But then go back and play the original and that puzzle was completely missing. I then realized that they basically added 3 times the amount of content and moved things around. Because? Like, they added an entire new half to the apartments, moving most of its items and narrative beats, where a coin for a puzzle would be in the original is now replaced with a key to access more corridors to beat up more bloody gimps. In the original hospital, there was a sequence of puzzles needed to unlock a box to get a single strand of human hair, and this had a lot of narrative implications and is used for a future combination puzzle to fish something out of a drain. This has everything. It contextualizes narrative, it motivates exploration and provides progression. Cool, but this same locked box in the remaster has been moved for some reason and contains nothing. Why? Bloober Team do this thing where they reference the original's more tedious and confusing puzzles with a wink like, oh, we wouldn't dare do that. Well, that's cocky, mate, considering what you've replaced it all with. I have a lot to say on how puzzles are designed in these Resident Evil Remake clones, but I honestly think that deserves its own dedicated episode. Yeah, I called it a Resi Remake clone. That's what it is. It's a third-person shooter with over-the-shoulder camera controls. Level designs have been altered to facilitate said camera change, and a huge shift in focus to combat between puzzles. Now, this works in Resident Evil because of its tone, but here, it just obliterates any kind of suspense the original had, which was undeniably its focus. Don't get me wrong, I think this game might be one of the best Resident Evil Remake clones out there today, and if that's what you want, more power to you. But honestly, I'd prefer to vacation in Silent Hill rather than Silent Kill to many enemies. Yeah, it was a stretch. But what do you think? Do you think that the remake is superior for making all of its changes, or was the jank of the original not just its charm but also the driving force for its impactfulness? Let us know down below because we would love to discuss this with you. So if you enjoy this show and all of our other podcasts and stream series, why not consider checking out our Patreon? We have exclusive content, ad-free videos and hangouts with the Second Wind team over there. All of the support from these wonderful people allows us to keep making this weird ass content that we love spewing out. So to all of these legends and you for simply watching, thanks. Alright Ludo, say thank you and goodbye. Alright, bye guys.